In the wide marshlands of Oklahoma, 12-year-old Ray finds a giant fossilized footprint after a thunderstorm floods the river. It is longer than his whole arm, pressed deep into stone. That night, he dreams of a creature as tall as a cliff, with a neck like a tower and feet that stir the earth. The name comes to him, Sauroposeidon. As strange tides rise and storms grow louder, Ray notices the land changing. Trees bend toward empty sky. Waters move without wind. Something old has returned. Not in body, but in presence. And it remembers the deep breath of the sea. The rain came without warning. It started as a whisper across the fields and quickly became a roar that swallowed the sky. Ray stood barefoot at the edge of the old riverbed, watching the water rise over dry stone that had not been touched in years. The Oklahoma sky flashed white. Thunder rolled over the distant trees like something waking from sleep. He did not run. The others had already gone back to their houses, lights glowing behind curtains. But Ray had never been afraid of storms. He said the sky was loud only when it had something to say. When the wind shifted, he turned to leave. That was when he saw it. A depression in the stone. Round. Deep. Almost perfect. He stepped toward it. The shape was smooth and broad, filled with muddy rainwater. It was nearly the length of his arm and sank into the sandstone like a bowl carved by pressure and weight. Ray crouched beside it and placed his hand against the edge. It felt colder than the surrounding rock. The water inside rippled, though no wind touched it. Ray looked up. There were more. Not many, just two others. One closer to the edge of the bank, the other almost hidden beneath a layer of grass and moss. He brushed the moss aside and stared. 3 massive footprints. He had walked this path 100 times, but he had never seen them before. They had been covered. Hidden. Buried under years of quiet. But now the storm had revealed something ancient. He stood in silence. The thunder stopped. The sky went still. Ray leaned over the largest print again and saw his reflection twisted in the puddle. Then, something else. A long shape. Rising. Moving. He blinked. It was gone. He took one step back, then another. He knew a fossil when he saw one. His father had been a part-time fossil hunter, once. He kept fragments in their shed, ammonites, a partial jawbone, some chipped pieces of shell. But nothing like this. Nothing that spoke through silence. Ray rushed home. He told his mother, but she said the storm was getting worse and to stay inside. He told his science teacher the next day, who smiled and said maybe it was just a natural rock formation. But Ray knew it was not just rock. It was weight and memory pressed into stone. That night, the storm came again. He dreamed of tall trees swallowed by fog. Of shallow waters stretching for miles. Of a giant neck rising from the horizon like a living tower. It moved slowly but surely, every step a quake. He woke before dawn, heart racing, shirt damp with sweat. The river was louder than before. Ray dressed quickly and slipped out of the house, past the porch, and down the field to the old riverbed. The sky was still dark, but the storm had passed. The air smelled clean. The prints were still there. But now, the ground around them looked different. More soft patches. More subtle depressions, like echoes of movement. He followed them. They led along the river's edge, curving through the reeds and into a narrow bend where the trees hung low. He stopped there, breath caught. Another print. This one deeper. And beside it, something else, what looked like a long drag mark, as if a tail had moved through mud. He knelt and touched it. The ground was warm. Birds stirred above him. A gust of wind moved through the trees. Ray closed his eyes. He heard something. A long, distant sound. Not a roar, not a cry. A deep breath, like wind pulled through the lungs of something too large for sight. The name came to him. Sauroposeidon. He did not know where he had heard it. But it fit. Not just because of the size or shape. Because it felt like a name the land itself had remembered. Ray sat at the edge of the bend and waited. He did not know for what. But he knew something had returned. Not to be seen. To be known. Ray returned to the river every morning before sunrise. Each time the water had shifted. Sometimes it was higher, flooding parts of the field that had always stayed dry. Other days it had retreated, revealing more of the ancient ground beneath. Always, the footprints remained. He started mapping them. He took his sketchbook and drew each print with care, tracing their curve and depth. He measured the distance between them using a stick marked with thread. The strides were long, too long for any modern creature. Each step was several meters apart, yet evenly spaced like a rhythm or pattern remembered by the earth. He showed the pages to his science teacher again. This time she raised her eyebrows and asked if he had made them up. When he swore they were real, she promised to look but never did. At home, his mother said maybe the prints had always been there, and the storm only washed away the dirt. Ray didn't argue. He knew better. He stopped telling people. Instead, he started listening. The wind moved differently near the river. It blew in slow pulses, like breaths. The water made a sound that reminded him of footsteps, soft but deep. When he stood still enough, he could feel vibrations beneath his feet. On the fifth day, he saw the shape again. Not in the water. In the mist that rose from the field at dawn. It stretched across the horizon, a long neck reaching toward the sky, a massive body half hidden in light. He blinked and it vanished. But he knew what he had seen. It was not a ghost. It was a memory. That afternoon he returned with a small shovel and began digging near the deepest print. The soil came away easily. Underneath, he found something hard. He scraped gently, careful not to damage it. Slowly, a large piece of bone emerged. It curved slightly, with a smooth surface and hairline cracks running through it. It was heavier than anything he had lifted before. Not in weight, though it was dense, but in presence. He wrapped it in his jacket and carried it home. That night, as he lay in bed, the bone beside him on the windowsill, a soft sound filled the room. A low hum. He sat up. The bone pulsed with a faint warmth. Outside, the wind rose. He looked out the window and saw the trees bowing in one direction, not away from the wind, but toward the river. As if drawn. Ray placed the bone back on the windowsill and lay down again. His eyes stayed open until morning. The next few days passed slowly. He went to school, came home, visited the river, took notes, drew patterns. But the land kept shifting. The river changed shape again. Trees near the bend began to lean. Grass bent in circles around the prints. One evening he found fish stranded in a shallow pocket of water that had never touched that part of the land before. They flopped weakly on muddy earth, far from the river's flow. He gathered what he could and returned them to the current. Something was moving beneath the surface. Not a body. A presence. It did not break the ground, but it turned it. Bent it. Pulled it. Ray started having dreams again. This time he saw entire forests drowned in shallow seas. Giant trees rising from waterlogged soil. Sauroposeidon walking through the floodplain with its head brushing clouds. He was there, too, though he didn't know how. He walked among their legs like someone stepping between mountains. He woke with his heart full and his mind silent. He stopped needing words for what he felt. One morning, as he stood beside the largest print, the sun broke through the mist in a perfect column. The light fell into the footprint like a spotlight. And in that moment, he saw something in the center. A spiral. Not carved. Not drawn. Pressed into the stone. He knelt and touched it. It was not deep, but it was exact. Like a symbol. Or a key. Ray looked up. The mist parted just enough to show the outline again, towering, still, watching. Then it faded. But the spiral remained. That night, he returned to the river after dark. The moon was full. The prince glowed faintly under the pale light. He stood in the center of the 3 largest steps. He placed the fossil bone in the spiral. The earth went still. No wind. No sound. Then, slowly, the water began to rise. Not fast. Just enough to cover his shoes. Then his ankles. Then his knees. He did not move. He did not feel fear. Only weight. Not pressing down. Lifting. Like being remembered by something old. The river flowed backward for a few seconds. Then forward again. The bone sank into the spiral, disappearing without a ripple. Ray stepped back. Light moved across the surface of the water like lines drawn by invisible hands. They formed a shape. A tall figure. Long neck. 4 legs. A tail like a ship's mast. It stood across the river from him, made entirely of light and memory. Sauroposeidon. It turned its head slowly, looking directly at him. Ray held his breath. He understood then. The bones were not just fossil remains. They were messages. Echoes left behind by something too large to forget. Sauroposeidon had not returned to walk. It had returned to remind. He felt it in his chest. The weight of its step. The breath of its lungs. The slow, certain rhythm of its life. It stood there for a moment longer, then turned. It walked into the mist. The water calmed. The light faded. Ray was alone again. But not empty. Not forgotten. He picked up his sketchbook and drew the spiral one last time. He drew the shape of the Sauroposeidon made of light. Then he turned the page and started drawing something new. The land. The prince. The rhythm. The memory.